Hello, Lainey.
Hi, Grace. How are you?
I'm amazing because it's my favorite night of the month. It's Writers to Watch night.
It's going to be a great night. I mean, just talking to all of our authors beforehand, this is just going to be fun. I have a feeling it's going to be a great night. So, welcome everyone. Welcome to Writers to Watch, our monthly author series. Tonight we're having a really stellar lineup. We have four authors here to talk about their books. In a little bit, you're going to hear from Paul Tremblay, author of Dead but Dreaming of Electric Sheep, John Searles, author of Single Girls, Nicholas Russell, author of Observer, Meg Mason, author of Sophie Standing There. These books are going to be just conversation starters. We can't wait to hear more, but we want to do a little bit of housekeeping first before we jump in. Grace, is there anything they need to know?
If we want to do a big fun ALA reveal, we could do it at the end or we could do it now.
I say stick around for the review, but tell them how to sign up for Crowdcast and how they get
Oh
the
yeah.
book.
Oh yeah. That's an amazing point to bring up. So Crowdcast users get a little perk. A couple weeks before the event, we send out widgets to the e-galleys of our books, the ones that are available. Sometimes we have people on so early that we don't have e-galleys because we're building the excitement. But if the e-galleys are up, we will send out widgets so you can download it immediately, no approval needed. It's a really fun way to prepare for the event. I know that some people like to read them after, read them before, whatever floats your boat, but feel like it makes for a fun discussion. And you can always email us questions, leave them in the chat beforehand, and we'll do our best to get to them. But just a perk that the Crowdcast users get, you also have reminders that get sent to you. So I think that is a perk of Crowdcast. So if you're on Crowdcast, good
Yeah.
stuff.
And if you want even more in-depth reminders, you can always sign up for our newsletter, librarylovefest.com. You can sign up. We do send newsletter reminders every month too, so you can't move without seeing a reminder from us. And
The link in
the
the chat.
other, sorry.
I'll put the link in the chat for the
Thank
newsletter.
you. So you sign up for a newsletter if you don't already. We have some big ALA announcements coming soon, so be sure to be signed up. And the other note I was gonna say that totally left my brain, it was eGalleys and the newsletter. And oh, and if you ever have a question before the event, like Grace said, the comment box is always open on Crowdcast, so you can just leave one there. And tonight, I encourage you to leave comments, leave questions. Our authors want to hear from you, and we'll be there to filter them through. So I think those are our updates. A reminder that next month we are not doing a Writers to Watch. June, we're taking off. So stay tuned for July. That information will come.
Yeah, and
So don't
also
come
Galley
here
Gab
in
Fest.
June.
Yeah. Galley
Yeah.
Gab Fest for June is gonna be pre-recorded. Lady and I will be doing some book buzz. So yeah, we'll do a bite-sized book buzz for Galley Gab Fest in June. Maybe we'll dress up. We'll see.
Yeah. Okay, stay tuned for the big reveal for ALA at the end because we have a fun picture for you. All right, so we're gonna get started. Grace, sound good?
I'm ready.
All right, so I want to welcome on screen Paul Tremblay.
Where am I? Hey.
Hello. How
Hello.
are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good. It's so exciting to have you here.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
I can't wait to talk more about this book, but I'm going to read your bio first. So,
Sure.
Paul Tremblay is multiple award-winning, critically acclaimed New York Times best-selling author of 8 previous novels, including Horror Movie, The Pallbearers Club, Survivor Song, The Cabin at the End of the World, Disappearance at Devil's Rock, A Head Full of Ghosts, No Sleep Till Wonderland, and The Little Sleep, a middle grade novel, Another, and 2 short fiction collections, The Beast You Are and Growing Things. He lives in Boston with his family, and that's like not even including your many awards. I know Movie was a finalist for the Bram Stoker Award. Growing Things won the Bram Stoker Award for Best Collection. I mean, it goes on and on. So I didn't add all that. I would be here all night telling them how great. But your newest book is coming out June 30th, so not too far away. It's
Yeah.
called Dead but Dreaming of Electric Sheep, and I can't wait to hear more about it. So I pass it on to you.
All right. Thank you, Laney. Thanks everyone for watching. All right. So, um, I guess I'm going to start with weirdly, like this book. Well, maybe not weirdly. I hate doing research, and my favorite books are ones where I researched before I even knew I was going to do the book. So in this case, I read Mary Roach's Stiff, which is a really fun book about dead bodies, as horror writers are wont to read. Um, and there was, I remember there was a section years ago, there was a section about transporting, bringing, dead bodies across the country and flying them. And I just had the weird image of like, oh, in the future, what if someone could sort of like remote control a dead body instead of having to, I don't know, store it. I mean, it was a weird thought. And I just sort of put it away. Um, and a lot of times my stories come from weird thoughts and trying to make them seem like real, seem like that they could happen. Fast forward to like June of 23, when I first joined a lawsuit, a class action lawsuit suing OpenAI because ChatGPT steals all our books, doesn't pay us, doesn't ask our permission. So what ended up happening was I spent 2 years just being as a part of the I was a part of the case for 2 years. Just spent 2 years being really pissed off. I still am, frankly, and a lot of my anxieties about AI sort of melded with the remote control body and became dead but dreaming of electric sheep. Um, with the anti-AI sort of theme, I used this earlier on Instagram, but I created an analog image to share. uh, so if you imagine the book, putting stuff in a blender, Philip K. Dick, I can't even read this from here, from this far away. Coen Brothers, Weekend at Bernie's, horror. Maybe a little ice cream. Actually, I don't know if there's ice cream in the book, but I thought that would be a nicer blending shake. And then that's what you read. Anyway, what the hell is the book about? So, there's a man who's sort of my age in build who works for a tech company that's not OpenAI. um, and he happens to have a massive stroke while he's on the campus of this tech company. And he works in the mailroom. And all this happens off the page. Um, when he has the massive stroke, he's in a vegetative state, unconscious, and the doctors are like, no, there's no way he's gonna, regain consciousness. But he signed not only did he sign his body over to science, he signed it directly to this company, and they put AI and nanotechnology into his head so someone can remote control his body, like they're playing a video game. Um, so Julia Flang, who's the 24-year-old estranged daughter of the tech company's CFO, uh, is hired to basically weekend at Bernie's this guy across the country, and she even calls him Bernie for half the for half the book. So my hope is that the Julia sections, especially in the early part, are kind of funny and satirical, in a ridiculous way at how awful and corporatized the tech world is. At the same time, the other half of the book is unfortunately the person called Bernie. You find out his real name eventually. Um, is is not in a vegetative state, or he's not brain dead. He has consciousness, or he has sort of this bastardized consciousness where he he's going through basically like a phantasmagoric hellscape as he's being led across the country, and then everything comes together at the end in a suitably happy ending that I like to write. Did I? That's enough, right? I made the 5 minute mark. Is that good?
Yeah, no, it was
All right.
good. I was just gonna say, this book knocked my socks off. I feel like it's like an overwhelming fever dream, but like in the best way.
Thank
It's a
you.
compliment. The body horror was wild. I think I was like holding my breath as the two were racing across the country. Um, and I think it's kind of like shocking and funny at this the like you were saying about Julia's sections being really funny is perfect way to lead in a good balance there. And I just want to read, you
Thank
have
you.
2-starred reviews. Library
Oh,
Journal started and said Tremblay throws down the gauntlet of AI horror, a not to miss experience for fans of wide-ranging and chilling, humorous, existentially terrifying titles. And then Booklist gave it a star review and said the dangers of emerging tech have never been so chilling and simultaneously so strangely delightful. Um, and I just wondered if you, I mean, this is kind of like a philosophical question, so feel free to
yeah.
be like, I can't say anything else. But I feel like librarians every day are dealing with this AI conversation. We just went to a
Yeah.
conference where in line I asked people what they were looking forward to, and they're like, oh, we have so many AI meetings, and it's really mainly because as librarians they have to understand it in order to help their patrons or know what to warn against or any, you can't avoid it. So I just wondered if people who kind of are on this chat listening who, they're figuring out like this new frontier, like if there's anything you have to say about that.
Well, I mean, figuring it out, I mean, without getting too deeply and without putting myself in legal trouble by saying things that I only know through the case,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's all a giant shell game. Um, it's not helpful. It's not beneficial. And sorry, there's no current way in which it can. Well, I shouldn't say all of it. I mean, that's also the other insidious part of it. Like, there are. I'm really talking about like large language models, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to, if hopefully at some point, like there's, a different kind of AI that's, helps specific to the medical field. But even then, like you're going to have the AI make decisions for, for the health insurance, right? That's going to go well. And it's already happening. But anyway, my short view of it is unfortunately, there's no way to ethically use it if it's a large language model because they're built off of stolen works. Um,
Yeah.
um, yeah.
Yeah.
And I've been a high school teacher for 30 years, and it's frankly just made the classroom a utter shit show. Um,
I can
it,
imagine.
yeah, no, and so like, of course, you hear like, oh, it's the wave of the future. These are the salesmen that are getting money from the AI companies to sell you the AI that you don't really need, doesn't do what you want it to do. I mean, I could go on, and I don't want to sound like a,
Yeah.
someone who's just trashing it, but I am someone who's just trashing it and will continue to do so.
I mean, that's what this book is going to be great for book clubs too, to kind of sit down and have those conversations,
Yeah, I
right?
mean, that
Yeah,
image
it's
is really
perfect.
us with AI also just being shoved into our faces without ice cream, by the way.
Yeah.
That's
Have
awful
you heard
too.
where they were saying people take AI jobs? And I feel like you just did, and that was great. You made the image. It was perfect. Well, thank you. We're gonna hear more from you
Sure.
soon, but thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. And then I'm going to welcome on John Searles. Come on down. Oh,
Oops, sorry, and
that's
on
okay. I
video.
can't
There, I
see. There you go.
apologize. Hi, everybody. Sorry, I missed
I
my
didn't know if it
cue.
was mine. It could have been mine.
I think it was my fault. But
John Searles is in the house. Hello.
hi, Lainey. How are you, my dear?
Good. How are you?
I am well, thank you. Excited to be here as always.
We're excited to have you. And we're going to talk in a minute about Single Girls after I read your bio, which comes out July 7th. So let me read your bio and then let's hear more. So John Searles is a New York Times bestselling and award-winning author of 4 novels. We like to point out that you were on the very first library reads list for Help for the Haunted. So
Oh, that's right.
yeah.
That's right.
And his books have been published in over a dozen languages and have been voted best of the year or top picks by Boston Globe, Entertainment Weekly, Salon, and the American Library Association. A frequent contributor to the New York Times and the Washington Post, John was a top editor at Cosmopolitan. Might come around a minute for 2 decades, first hired by Helen Gurley Brown. And this book, John, I can't wait to hear more. I'll gush about it at the end, but tell us more about Single Girls.
I know when people hear Cosmo, they're expecting more cleavage and bigger hair. So, and sex tips floating around my head. So I hate to disappoint you all. But So, it's funny, for years I've done book events now. I usually write kind of darker, character-driven suspense, and afterwards, people come up to me and they say, "You seem so, like, sunny and bright and cheerful, and your books are so dark and creepy, I'm afraid to read them." That some of the people, and I feel like now I can say, "Well, actually, I have a book for you. It's called Single Girls." It's a very pink cover with Helen Gurley Brown on the cover. Uh, you know, I um, just to back up a little bit, I'd always wanted to be a writer, and growing up, no one in my family ever even went to college, and my dad was a cross-country truck driver, and he used to go trucking in the summers. My parents' goal, I've told the story before, their stated goal was to, quote, "make a man out of me," and I always say they didn't get the results they wanted, or I don't think they did, but my dad used to buy me, mass market paperbacks in the truck stops growing up, and it just kind of made me all the more want to be a writer. And I was terribly bullied in school for being gay. I didn't know I was gay, but the other boys picked up on it. So I used to hide in the library and read all the time. Anyway, I moved to New York after my younger sister died tragically, and I just made up my mind to try to become a writer. And I wrote a first book. I was waiting tables, putting myself through graduate school, and I wrote a first book, and it got this horrible, mean rejection. They left a scrap of paper, my mistake, in with the manuscript, and it was returned to me from a publishing house. I don't want to mention any names, but it rhymes with Schmubble um, anyway, and it said, I could barely make it to page 60, and I feel really badly for anyone who has to read the whole thing. And I was like, uh, I was very dramatic. I took to my bed, Lainey. I was like, I'll never write again. But I slowly started writing, and around that time, I heard about a job opening from my former professor at NYU and friend in the books department at Cosmopolitan magazine. So I went on the interview, and my friend had said to me, I said, I guess I need a resume. She said, well, you're a writer. Writers don't need resumes. So the very glamorous books editor, Betty Kelly, who's an inspiration for one of the characters in this book, she said to me, where's your resume? And I said, well, I'm a writer. We don't have those, which is ridiculous. I think she hired me because she felt sorry for me. My first day on the job was the day of the O.J. Simpson verdict. It was in the 90s, and some of us remember that was a really big deal. And we all went down to Helen's office to watch it at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And everyone was staring at the screen. And there was Helen at her desk working away with like, this like low cut top, speaking of that, and like a short skirt and bangle bracelets up her arm. And I remember everyone was staring at the screen, but I was just staring at Helen like, oh my gosh, who is this woman? And I said to my mom, I don't know if I fit in at Cosmo. Like, it seems like all these like very glamorous, very smart women. I don't know if I fit in. My mother said, well, give it 2 weeks. If you don't like it, quit. Well, I stayed for 23 years, and I never in my wildest dream, and I very quickly moved up to books editor and then on to many other roles as executive editor, editor at large, brand director. And I never thought that Helen and I would become friends, but along the way we did. Lainey, if you want to show, I have a picture. There's Helen and I. As you can tell, I think you can feel the love from that photo, is that she and I really, really adored each other. And much to my surprise, we had a lot in common, actually. Our love of words. She loved words and language, and I opened the book Single Girls with a glossary of uncommon words that Helen would use, among them Mouseburger, which is how she described herself, or pussycat, of course, she used. And I think we both had in common was we had very less than glamorous beginnings, and we both love words, and I love go-getter women. I love smart women. I think growing up, my dad, as I said, was a truck driver. So when he was gone, I was always with my sisters and my mom in our little tiny house. And then working in a women's magazine for 23 years, I was surrounded by women. And growing up, being a gay kid, all my friends were the girls. So I've always really connected with women really well. And I had so much fun writing Single Girls, and I poured so much of inspiration from my years in women's magazines. But Helen, she took over Cosmo in the 60s, and I wanted to capture that time. Like when I was at Cosmo late nights, I would pull old issues off the shelf, with the outrageous cover lines shot by Scavullo, with those models and fashions. And I would think someone should write a book about this, which became, I want to write a book about this. And so I finally did. And another person I met through Cosmo, she was not there when I was there, but she was Helen's best friend, and Liz Smith. There's a photo of Helen and Liz back in the day. Liz Smith was the famed gossip columnist, and I came to know Liz. She really launched my career because she wrote about my very first book in her column, which is when I was bought by HarperCollins and started my wonderful publishing career with HarperCollins. And Helen and Liz were best friends, and Liz was the entertainment editor at Cosmo in the 60s when Helen started. And I write about this in the book, which is a novel. So it's, people often ask, is it a biography? It's really so much inspired by truth, but it really is my imagination, imagining scenes that no one was there. And so I used to tell Helen, like, someday I'm going to write a book about you. And she would say, oh, pussycat, no one wants to read a book about a little mouse burger like me. But I wish she was here because I think she'd be very proud of this book. And so Helen really is like kind of the sun in the book, and the other single girls, the other editors, and the team of women she assembles to transform Cosmo in the 1960s. They're kind of like the planets around her, Liz being one of the planets. So Liz gets a point of view in a chapter too. And I based all the chapters of the different editors on actual cover lines from the 1960s. So it was just so much fun to write. It was such a joy. I'm really, really proud of it, and I dedicate the book in loving memory to Helen and to Liz, and then to various women in my career who have really changed my life. And I always tell this funny story. I talk about books on the Today Show a lot, and I had a book, Help for the Haunted, that you mentioned, written from the point of view of a teenage girl. And I was on the Today Show, and the host Craig Melvin said, "How do you write from the point of view of a teenage girl?" And I said, "Isn't it obvious deep down I am a teenage girl?" And my mother said that's when she turned off the television. So, but anyway, I loved writing these women. I felt, I could hear Helen's voice, I could hear Liz's voice, and Helen had a very kind of um, hard scrabble beginning to her life, and I write about a lot of that in the book too. And also, I should say, how can I write a book about Cosmo without a Cosmo quiz in the book? So there's actually a Cosmo quiz toward the end of the book that I know is unusual to do in a novel, but I had so much fun doing it, and it's a way to engage the reader and capture sort of some of the interesting things that Cosmo did. Um, in the 1960s. Yeah. So I don't know. I like Paul. I want to stay on my time. Oh, and there's a letter. So after Helen moved to the international editions, she would always write me letters. I have so many letters from her. Usually they're on pink stationery with a little doodle of her on the top, but this one was not. But so her voice said, "John, I'd love to visit when you have a chance to do that. I can only imagine the stresses and strains and madness, but sometimes things calm down a tiny touch. Thanks. Oh, thanks for the nifty birthday card. It may have won the sweepstakes. Bestest, Helen." So we just had a real deep affection for each other, and uh, I hope people love Single Girls, and I'm happy to answer any questions about it. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. This is such a love letter to Helen, but there's so much. I'm so glad you talked about the other editors because there's so much that goes beyond Helen, like all of her influence. As the Sun is a perfect way to say it. But I think you see this new Cosmo kind of becoming under her, becoming a new thing, and you see these women who are kind of told that they can't do anything. But I thought beyond that, and the stories that you really connect to in this book, I thought that highlighting the revolutionary concept of like women being able to understand their own bodies when it was a time when their body was really all that people wanted them for, you know? And so I thought that it was such a great dive into that time of history. I thought it was beautiful. It was an ode all
Thank you.
around. Yeah.
Yeah, that particular story was kind of revolutionary that they did that at the time because they ran a map of the female anatomy
Yeah.
in a commercial women's magazine in a very early issue of hers. So that's why I was like, when I was in magazines for many years, the stories we ran were really inspired by the editors. And so Helen and Liz led very public lives and they wrote books. And so I knew them both, but the other editors led less public lives. So really what I had to go on was, well, what stories did they edit and what did they run at the time? And presumably they were inspired by their lives. So I looked at those issues and that one you mentioned, or, you know, different ones. And Helen was obsessed with having Liz write about a Park Avenue call girl. So one of the chapters is Liz going to interview this Park Avenue call girl. There's also a chapter from a trip to an early prototype of the world's first champagne glass hot tub, which I had a lot of fun writing as well. So,
Those are both really
uh,
great parts. Yeah.
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 So it's a really unique book for me because, like I said, I usually write dark, more suspenseful, character-driven books, but I like to think I brought some of what I learned writing that into this very, very happy pink
Well,
colored
I
book
have to
with
say that
Helen.
first scene in the book, something happens, truly it happened to Helen's father. And
Yes,
I was like, oh, I'm in a John Searles book because you wrote it. It was like a thrilling element. I was like, so it's brought in
yes.
there a little.
It is brought in there a little bit because Helen did have some dark times, but then overall, it's true. There's a novel, so there's pathos, but overall,
Yeah.
it's a joyful book, which I
Yeah.
I just didn't have it in me to write anything dark right now, and I wanted to write
Mm.
something joyful. And I remembered a conversation that Helen and I had early on about what happened to her father when she was
It's
young.
terrible.
And I got up during the night and I thought, let me try to write it. Maybe it's my way into the novel. And the way inspiration works, I just kept writing
Yeah.
and now we have Single Girls, so thank you.
Yeah, of course. And Library Journal gave it a star review, and I think this sums it up. Searles' novel Sparkles, beguiling portrait of a woman who created space and a market for women's voices. And it goes on to say really, really great things. So I
Well,
can't wait to hear more.
Thank you, Lainey, for cheering for it, and
Of
thank you for everybody
course.
listening. I
Of
appreciate it.
course. Oh, and I
Thanks.
was going to mention on social, you have some collaborations with some people who did some like quizzes from old Cosmo magazines.
Oh,
I'm going to
yes.
put those links in.
Oh, yes, because there's this account, Gabby's Vintage, and she's a vintage fashion person with a bajillion followers, and she read the book and loved it. And she's been doing all these great things on social that we've been collaborating. And then also we're we're showing a bunch of clips from Helen on Dick Cavett and Helen on these old interview shows. And you really see the way that men were so dismissive of her and what she had to say at the time. And so we're going to be airing those from now until it publishes in July 7th.
Oh,
So
that's great.
I hope
I
people will
love
go.
that.
It's just at John Searles on my Instagram, so I hope
Yeah.
they'll.
I'll put it in the chat so they can go check it out.
Thank
All
you.
right. We'll see you in a minute.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, Paul and John. I'm excited to welcome on Nicholas Russell.
Hi there.
Oh, thanks for being here to talk
Thanks for
about
having
your debut. Congratulations.
me. Thank you.
How are you feeling about it? Excited, nervous, all the above?
Yeah, it's funny. I'm a bookseller too. So I don't know, I've been a bookseller for over 10 years, and it's very easy to be very kind of judgmental as a
Mm,
bookseller about the kinds of books that come out and how many of them there are, and
yeah.
different trends and so forth. So I feel very much on the hook, but it's exciting. I'm proud of the
Yeah.
book.
And you should be. It's an amazing, amazing novel. I'm going to read a
Thank you.
quick bio for you and then we'll talk more about it. So Nicholas Russell is a writer from Las Vegas. His work has appeared in McSweeney's, Conjunctions, The Baffler, No Tokens, Defector, and Hunger Mountain. Observer is his first novel. So I am going to pass it off to you to tell everybody what you want people to know about Observer.
Yeah, I guess I'll just do a little background. I'm from Vegas, born and raised, um, and I would like to say that I had the like sort of typical writer's background. I was like always writing as a kid. I definitely read a lot, but I didn't really start writing until high school. And I had always wanted to be a director, a film director, and that was like my big dream was to go to New York, go to school in New York, and that was sort of the extent of the plan. Um, and the reason why I say that is because I had not really ever had much of an opinion of being from Vegas. I knew that other people did. And so it was sort of embarrassing, especially because all of the stereotypes that people sort of lean into, even if they know they're not true, about like a classic example being like, where do people who live in Vegas live? Because it's only hotels, blah, 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 blah. It's like, whatever. But by the time I finally did move to New York and was in film school and finally was sort of on the road to doing what I thought I wanted to do is when I started writing more. I moved back to Vegas for family reasons, so I was really depressed about it. But um, I came to realize that the point of view I have that I didn't know I had of being from the Southwest was really interesting to other people, like from a writing perspective. And so I started freelancing a lot. And I realized that my fiction was never really about the Southwest. It wasn't really about the desert. And I think I was looking for something unique, not to say necessarily, but like a unique scenario. And I started writing out this short story, which ended up actually being the final chapter of Observer. Um, the end, I typically start with the end in mind. It's usually the first image or sort of vibe I have, and I sort of work backwards from there. And I kept getting longer and longer. And it started out with this, image of this woman who I knew was a scientist at an observatory out in the middle of the desert. And there's a big image at the end that I won't spoil, but I was sort of curious about it and wanted to see if I could make her story make sense in order to like get to that final image. And what came from that is this story about a mother and daughter, a reluctant mother who gives up her child as soon as it's born to her sister. And that child grows up. Her name's Renata, and she grows up without her mother, but is being raised by her aunt and living with her cousin. And one day, this mother that she's only ever heard of and seen pictures of, all of her belongings are delivered to her aunt's house, seemingly without any reason. And the idea is that her mom is dead, that this is the final sort of act of not necessarily revelation, but it's a kind of unceremonious, like a dumping of stuff. But Renata is not so sure. She has a feeling that she's acting on that is butting up against the rational mindset of her aunt, who is seemingly a little too quick to suggest that her mother is dead. And so Renata goes out to the middle of Nevada to the observatory where her mother used to work, an observatory that was shut down for an official reason that Renata comes to suspect is actually a cover for something else. And part of what's in her mother's belongings that she takes with her is there's two diaries. There's one from a early 20th century river surveyor on the Colorado who she has no idea who this person is. She has no idea why his writings are there. And then she also has her mother's diaries, which are very meticulous and sort of outline a life that Renata had like no idea about, a life that by choice from her mother, like Renata was like just never part of. And as she finds this town, starts talking to people, as she's reading through her mother's diaries, as she's reading through this other person's diaries, she's learning more things about the true state of things in this town, at the observatory, what was going on with her mother, what might actually be going on with her herself. She has a certain health condition that seems to be echoed in all of the inhabitants of this town. And those sort of three lines converge in a way that, you know, I'm sure the other writers on this can relate. Sometimes you write through something and you think it's about one thing, and then you show it to someone else and they're like, oh, it's so interesting that the book is about this other thing that you weren't really thinking about. And Observer is one of those in the sense that a lot of people who read early drafts or even galleys of the book have said that it's a book about reading. It's a book about parsing information, especially for Renata. You know, she has to be a very critical reader because she has to comb through what may be white lies or like convenient sort of biases with very personal, intimate, like records from her mother that, you know, they clash with things that she's heard from other people about her about similar periods of time. And, you know, it's a mother and daughter story, but I've grown up with so many different around different permutations of that particular relationship. And the people who I'm very close to, who I care about a lot, have very, very difficult relationships with their mothers. And that was an aspect of the novel and the characters in it that I wanted to write through and write about. This lack of warmth that can happen sometimes. And Renata's like search for closure is really a kind of search for acknowledgement. One of the things that she finds in her mother's diaries is that she's not in them very much, like even after she's born. And this is a horror novel, so the sort of central element in terms of like the supernatural or whatever that's in it very much has to do with the desert landscape, with this climate and biome that I've grown up around. It's like my favorite kind of landscape in the world. And the horror that comes from it is very different than sort of haunted house, sort of spooky, foggy, more kind of stuff. It's very much takes place in broad daylight. There's disorientation from heat, from not seeing things that are there or seeing things that aren't there, and also what you're breathing in. Um, there's a lot of nature based sort of horror in the book that parallels a lot of my experiences sort of being lost when going for a hike, or you know stepping on something that gets onto you, and like you think it's like kind of benign, but then you start to have like a sort of allergic reaction to it. And I also have always had a thing with spores. It can really freak me out. So and my agent called this spore, like spore horror, which I think is a fair category for it. But yeah, I don't know. I see this novel as a culmination of so many things that I've been thinking about since I've grown up here, left, come back to the desert. And I hope that readers are who are familiar with the desert, but also people who for whom it's maybe a little alien to them will be sort of swept up in the place and description of it all. I tried really hard to make the novel and its setting as visceral as possible, both for the characters and hopefully for the reader. And you know, John was talking about not being in the mood to write something dark. And that wasn't really my intention, but it's a novel that starts pretty at one place and goes somewhere very different by the end. Just say that.
Thank you so much. I love that you mentioned that you wanted to be a film director because the novel feels very cinematic. It's like from the jump, like the prologue alone made me deeply uncomfortable, and I mean that in the best way. I've just never felt so watched. And like I'm in my room reading, and that part, just the prologues in that second person, and I'm like, oh, but it was such a phenomenal read. And I have a quote by Danzy Senna, author of New People, who said, Nicholas Russell's fiction, coiled, restrained, beautiful, and haunting, evokes the new Wild West and its only inhabitants, all of them searching. The result is deeply unsettling, urgent, dark, and wry. So thank you, Nicholas. I'm gonna put you in the virtual green room and welcome on Meg Mason.
Thank you so much.
Hi, how are
Hi,
you?
Good, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. It's Wednesday morning in Australia, so
Yeah.
it's lovely to join you on Tuesday.
Yeah, thanks for spending your morning with us, our evening. I'm so excited that you're here with us today for Sophie standing there, and I'm gonna read a quick bio and then I'll pass it off to you. Meg Mason began her career at the Financial Times and the Times of London. Her work has since appeared in the Sunday Times, the Sydney Morning Herald, and the Sunday Telegraph. She has written humor for Sunday Style, The New Yorker's Daily Shouts and Murmurs, a monthly column for GQ, and has been a regular contributor to Vogue, Elle, and Marie Claire. She lives in Sydney with her husband and 2 daughters. So Meg, thank you for being here. I'm just really excited to have you on, and I know librarians are as well, and I'm gonna let you take it away.
Thank you. So, although authors are often asked where the inspiration for a novel came from, it can be such a tricky question to answer because by the time you finished writing it, that Genesis moment could have been years ago. And maybe there wasn't one either. You just sat down like any desk worker, hoping the muse was also aware of your contractual obligations. But with Sophie standing there was such a precise moment. I can recall it to the day and hour. Um, in May 2024, I went to New Zealand to interview Anne Patchett at the Auckland Writers Festival. And I'd met Anne before, so I wasn't nervous. And the job of moderator is always the same. So when Auckland emailed what I knew would be a half page of housekeeping instructions, I decided that I would just read it nearer the time. And then I forgot. So nearer the time became on the night in the wings as the auditorium was filling. But because I could not find that email on my phone, I went up to a production crew member to see if she had a hard copy. And she did, but instead of handing me the half page that I was expecting, she gave me what looked like a printout of Swan's Way. It was so thick, and it's dark in the wings, and I did not have my glasses. But even so, I could see that, as well as pointing out the fire exits and telling everyone to put their phones on silent, I was required to open the event with a traditional greeting in Te Reo Māori, which is the Indigenous language of New Zealand. I grew up in New Zealand, but I do not speak Maori, and I had to give that greeting, which was lengthy, by heart. Do you know that sick feeling of realizing that you have made a serious professional mistake, and in this case, you have 10 minutes to rectify it before going out in front of 800 people to interview their favorite world famous author? And I just remember, as I began to feel so incredibly hot, the door to the wing swung open and in walked Bonnie Garmis, just coming to say hello. And with that kind of boldness that's born of terror and desperation, I went up and I said, Bonnie, wouldn't it be so funny if you went out on stage before us and pretended to be a festival volunteer and just did all the housekeeping, and then I can do this Maori greeting for you? Miraculously, she said yes. And I went to tell a crew member that we'd made this little change to the format. And this woman said, okay, but I'd have to go and ask the head of production. And I was like, no, don't ask. It can just be a hilarious surprise. And she was like, no, really, and disappeared to find her boss while I kind of retreated to a corner to learn that greeting by heart. And when I flipped the page, a lengthy closer as well. And there was just no way. And I remember hearing the rumble of the audience and looking around the wings for anyone who could help me. And at that moment arrived the head of production, who was also in my 11th grade biology class. I had not seen or thought about this woman for 30 years, but for those remaining minutes, she sat and helped me. And because of her and the power of phonetics, I made it through that night. Um, and then I flew home and I went back to the novel that I'd been working on for a year, but I just kept thinking about that experience in Auckland. And I realized that while I had thanked my old schoolmate profusely, I hadn't wondered afterwards what that experience might have been like for her. And the job of a novelist is to wonder about the experience of other people. Um, and publishing my previous novel, Sorrow and Bliss, was a life-changing experience for me. But through the kind of mad 2 years of it, I worked really hard not to let it change me in any way. But I started to wonder about, what if I had, like, what if I'd let all of that kind of sugary attention turn me into this literary monster who was so scared of that attention going away that I needed to kind of exert my specialness by treating others as unspecial or by simply not noticing them. And I wondered, would someone who worked around authors ever feel unseen even while actively serving them? And there I was, sort of sitting at my desk on the 12th of June at 10:20 a.m. when I recognized that I'd been given inspiration. And reality kind of sheared off into imagination. And I put aside that novel I'd been working on, because there, in the kind of half dark of these imaginary wings, came Sophie, a backstage worker at a literary festival who is kind and positive and interested in the happiness of everybody around her. And she's also a passionate reader. But when we meet her, Sophie has just suffered this devastating loss that has put her in a situation of loneliness to a level that she's never experienced before. And in her sort of search for solace and company, she returns to an author that she has read once, who meant nothing to her at the time, the way some authors don't, but comes to mean everything to her in the course of this novel, which was, as we all kind of say, such a joy to write. In 2024, you remember that sad girl fiction was at its peak. So to write a cheerful character felt like this merry act of rebellion. And because Sophie is a passionate reader, I got to dwell in books and think about their importance to us and what we really mean when we say reading saved us. Which means, of course, that Sophie saying there is a novel of it, but there's one thing about that for me, that it's not just for the confident book reader. It's also for people like Sophie who love books but are not sure if they even kind of qualify as real readers. Because like me, Sophie came to reading really late. I don't think I read a book for pleasure until I was about 18. And what that does is give you this sort of lingering insecurity about whether you're doing it right, whether you're kind of reading the right books at the right, in the right way. And to feel almost this kind of shame about the things that you like, and, the fact that you've never read Middlemarch, despite multiple efforts in my case. So although this book is kind of concerned with literature, it's strenuously non-literary in the sense of it being really hard work for the reader. And it's sort of as though by trying to think and do as Sophie would, I've produced a novel that, all I hope, is kind of friendly and unpretentious, the way that she is, and kind of just carries the reader along. But also, I would say that for industry level book lovers, like librarians, it's jammed with Easter eggs, because you don't sort of spend 2 years on the literary circuit without seeing some things. And it's also populated by real authors, from like George Saunders to Richard Osman and Jojo Moyes, who all graciously said yes to acting as characters in the text. And there's also some sidebarring about kind of how fiction works, and some bugbears, which I believe we all might have in common. But ultimately, I would say that Sophie is a book about loneliness and about connection, and the power of finding the right book, or, the book that you need exactly when you need it, which I think is one of the ways that you as librarians kind of help all of us, sometimes I imagine without, what feels like due glory. But in that little bit of the Maori greeting that I did eventually learn, and I still know by heart, I want to say from here down under, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, which means thank you all so much. And we're done.
Thank you, Meg. That was phenomenal. I loved your anecdote about the Anne Patchett body moment, and they both blurbed the book, so clearly it worked out.
Well, they did. I think they've forgiven me for my absolute professional lapse.
No, it was phenomenal. A great story to set this wonderful book up. But I just wanted to call out, in the Library Journal just gave you a starred review in the print edition for May, and they said Mason's novel, centered on an endearingly self-doubting woman, is filled with wry insights into the backstage world of book festivals and their famous authors. It is a special treat for book lovers. And I just could not agree more, and congrats on the starred review. And
thank you. That's so nice. It's the first I've heard of it, so that's very exciting.
It was hot off the press. So thank you so much, and I'm gonna welcome everybody back onto our virtual stage.
Oh my goodness. I feel like, Meg, there were 2 books of horror, and that story was maybe the scariest for me personally. Chills. But like Grace said, it all worked out because they gave you wonderful quotes. I'm sure you were fabulous. So thank you so much. And I feel like the comments are great. Somebody actually, Meg said, thank you for being so authentic to the story of the origin of the story. And then there are just a lot of quotes saying like how much they are enjoying this. And I think resoundingly, everyone thinks the covers for all 4 of your books are just fantastic. So that's what a lot of the comments are saying. Okay, I think we have a little time for a couple of questions, so I think I'm just gonna go back in the order when we started. So Paul, I think I would like to shout out that some of the chapters in the book are set differently, or like they take up space on the page a little differently, some of the words. And you've done this before, like with Paul Bearer's Club, you had people writing in the margins, but do you want to talk about that part of the book, can he? That's really cool.
Much to the chagrin of my publisher. Ebooks, schmeebooks, right, librarians? Yeah, because anytime you do like weird typography, it wreaks havoc on the ebooks. But anyway, yeah, I don't want to say too much without being a spoiler, but there is, there's a reason why, and it's related to what we'll call him Bernie for now is experiencing. Um, and some of it sort of reflects like where his mind is or where it might be going, and it also reflects sort of the invasion of his mind too, uh, which is going on. Um, the invasion of all our minds, of AI, etc.
You won't hear the word click without kind of like triggering click.
Yeah,
Thank you. Yeah, it's really cool. And it's cool to see laid out. Yeah. Um,
thank you.
okay, John. Some of the experience in the book, it's like semi-related to movies. You've had some experience with some movies and books and movies. Um, and so Helen's husband is in the movie business. I wondered if you like if this is kind of a silly question and you're going to be like, don't ask me that, it's too hard. But do you have someone in mind who could play Helen Gurley Brown? Like,
Me? No, I'm just kidding.
yes, you should.
I'm only
You
kidding.
got to play yourself.
I never really think of casting when I'm writing a book. I don't know if any of the other writers do. I don't really think of actors and things like that. I just think of the characters. But um, there are different people, but I don't know. I don't want to say. I will
Okay.
say, speaking of actors, so one of my books that had been turned into a film was Strange But True, and I always say one of the best parts of that experience was the friendship I formed with the actress Amy Ryan, who she was Oscar nominated for her role in Gone Baby Gone by Dennis Lehane, and she was in The Office, and she was in Only Murders in the Building, and she's been on Broadway. She and I met on set and became friends, and she read the audio for Single Girls, and so we recorded last week a very fun discussion. I went to the studio, and at the end of the audiobook, Amy and I have a very fun chat about the experience of her reading the book, and I've heard little snippets that she did from it, and I'm so excited just to have her contribution because we adore each other so much, and I think people will just really love hearing the audio with her reading it. But in terms of casting, I will leave that to
Okay.
people who are better at that sort of thing.
Kind of an
than me.
unfair question, but that's okay. I'm sorry. But I'm so glad you said that about the audiobook. That's really special. And I love hearing that
I'm
there's a
excited.
Q&A at the end. That's great.
Yes, I know.
So do you
It was
find when you went to write this, do you find it easier or harder when you kind of know the person? Is it what like I would think that sometimes that's a little harder because you like want to get everything right, or
you
is
know,
it easier?
I don't know what the other writers say. My husband always says that some of my books are like a house guest who comes and does not leave for a really long time. And he's like, wishes they would go. But this book it was such a joy for me to write. And I wrote most of it. We live in New York City and we have a little house out of town in Sag Harbor. And I would go to the Sag Harbor Library every day. And there was a room on the top floor. Started calling it my office. You had to get there right at 9 o'clock so no one else grabbed it. So I would always be right on time and grab that room. And I don't know, Thomas, my husband, would drop me off in the morning. It was such a happy experience. It was a tremendous amount of work because it was the 1960s and I wasn't around in the 60s. And even though I knew the people, there was so much about that decade that was so transformative. And so I just really wanted to do it justice and do it accurately. So it was a lot of work, but it was just a pure pleasure and delight. I loved writing this book, and there have been others that I loved writing them, but they were just really hard and felt like I had to I don't know, it was like a really bad birth or something. I don't know. I can't say I've ever given birth, but what I imagine or what I've heard from my female friends.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, but there's so much deep attention to detail for the setting too. I'm sure that research was kind of fun too.
It
Adding
was
it
fun.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good. Thanks. All right, Grace, over to you.
Well, thank you. Nicholas, I love that you're a bookseller and you included two in your epigraph, two sections one from The Willows by Algernon Blackwood and the other being The Damned Thing by Ambrose Bierce. Did you draw inspo from these two? And what was it like? Did you feel like you just connected with these pieces, and how do they relate to the novel to you?
Yeah, Ambrose Bierce is like he's like the dark Mark Twain in a way. He's like Mark Twain if he like wrote horror. He's like a really great 19th century writer who went missing actually. Like they couldn't find him like at the sort of end of his life. But he is one of my favorite sort of like setting based writers. Not setting based, but I love the way he writes descriptions of landscapes. And the damned thing, that short story, is very a friend of mine had recommended it to me because he was reading it for a class, and it's a really incredible story. I really encourage anyone who hasn't read it to read it. But there was there's an element in that story that I found like really unlocked something for me when I was writing Observer. It really has to do with you mentioned the sort of like being watched feeling. Like there's a really great sense of tension and kind of claustrophobia in that story. He also is a really great um fast, not fast paced, but he has a real ripcord in his stories that I've found very aspirational. I don't know if I did it, but yeah, he's great. And then Algernon Blackwood is like a widely anthologized um, horror writer, British horror writer, who I feel like if you pick up any sort of collection of gothic fiction, The Willows is probably in there. Great story, really incredible writer, and his preoccupation throughout his life was nature, capital N, nature. How it has its own intelligence, and an intelligence that might not be benevolent, and at its worst might be ambivalent, which is where a lot of the horror from his writing comes from. So yeah.
Amazing, thank you. Meg, we have a question in the chat for you from our friend Donna. She says, Meg, was it difficult to blend your use of real characters with your story narrative? How did you choose the authors you wanted to include?
I had a rule. Thank you for that question. I had a rule that I had to be able to contact these authors myself or by one degree of separation, because I didn't find out till afterwards that I could have just used real people without their permission. And I said to my editor, I'm like, "Are you sure? Like, I'm making them do stuff. I'm not just referencing their books, but I have George Saunders having a little meltdown about his microphone on page 1, and Jojo Moyes gets this incredibly dry mouth during an event and there's no water on the table." And I'm just like, I would be so horrified if I ever opened a novel and I was in it. So I emailed them all, kind of somehow I got to them, and I was thinking, oh my gosh, they'll say no. Like there's nothing in it for them. And it's not like these people, like, David Sedaris doesn't need to get his name out there with my help. But they all said yes, which was amazing. But the part that I loved so much was that they each emailed back in their own style. So I have this little dossier of emails from these people that is so kind of quintessentially them that honestly, I think I should publish it instead of the book because it's just so charming. But the reason that I did it in the first place is, how in movies, if there's a movie about a celebrity, but it's, some famous actress, but it's not a famous actress, the suspension of disbelief is so much harder, and all they can really do is put paparazzi on her, and you're just like, but I don't know who that person is. And because the kind of main author who Sophie connects with and sort of longs to meet is an invention, to then put around her all of these other authors who are also inventions would have really kind of confused the whole enterprise. So I think it was just for verisimilitude basically that I did it, and I just got really lucky that these people said yes.
I love that. Yeah, I wasn't like actively thinking about that while I was reading, but that is such a good point of like you're reading a book and like you said, there's like a pop star and you're like, who is this person? But yeah, no, that was great. Thank you. Okay, we're a little bit over.
I know we could stay all night and hear from everyone. But yeah, we are getting some love, and I think since we've asked the question, we're gonna do a lightning round. What you're reading, right now, and then we will make a note and a catalog for our librarians. So I'm gonna go by who I see on screen first. So Meg, what book are you reading and loving now?
I have it here because I'm so desperate to show you the cover so it imprints on everybody's mind. This is The Palm House by Gwendolyn Riley. It's just come out. She's a British writer. And when I found out that she's the same age as me, I had that moment where I'm like, well, I'm quitting because I can't write like that. And that's all I want to do. And we should just get Gwendolyn Riley to write all the books. It is just so incredible and delicate, and it's about nothing, but then I just, it's about everything. And I just think that is such a gift. And it was one of those ones that I finished it and then I just started it again. So I encourage everybody to read it.
What's it called again? I'm sorry, I missed the
It's
title.
called The Palm House.
The Palm
by
House.
Gwendolyn
Okay.
Riley. It looks massive when I hold it up, but it is indeed a standard size novel.
It sounds like one of those. I always say I'm jealous of who gets to read it for the first time. One of those books.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, Paul.
I'm gonna give you three, and I'll talk fast like a stereotypical East Coaster. So first just out now, Lauren Groff's Brawler, which I'm sure most of you already know about, how amazing she is, but it's an incredible collection. Two books that are coming out later this year. Sarah Langan's Tradwife. Sarah's a friend, but she's also like a writer that I deeply admire. In this book, it's fun, it's weird, it makes you feel uncomfortable. And despite the title, I mean, she doesn't moralize, doesn't take easy pot shots, and actually makes you sort of confront your own sort of morals, which is my favorite kind of book. So I can't recommend Tradwife enough. And then I I just recovered from fairly major surgery. I'm doing great, but I had 3 weeks at home. So Del Rey sent me China Mieville's forthcoming book, The Rouse, which is 1,250 pages
I'm
of
so jealous. Oh my
dense,
God.
and it's amazing. I mean, I think I needed those 2 weeks at home doing nothing to be able to read it. But it's just this wild mix of weird fiction, amazing characters, and British history and politics from the 70s, the 80s. It's really like this monster of the 20th century becomes this even weirder monster in the 21st. So, yeah.
Anybody
great.
from PRH is listening, get that copy to Nicholas.
Yeah, please. Oh my God, I would
We
cry.
might-
we might know some
We
people.
might know a few
We'll
people.
put feelers out there and let you know.
Well, no promises. We'll do our best. Okay, John.
I have two books going because I was traveling and I forgot one, so I started a new one. I'm sure that happens to the other writers watching too, were you? But I started Whistler, the Ann Patchett book. I read the first chapter just last night, and it was totally pulled me in the museum when I love the Eddie Triplett, I think is the guy's name, that's kind of following her in the museum, and it's really engaging, and so far loving it, and I plan to get back to it tomorrow. And then the book I left that I was enjoying too was a book called Alan Opts Out by Courtney Maum. And it's about a guy in advertising who's like assigned to bring cow's milk back because no one wants to drink it anymore. They all want to drink oat milk and almond milk and stuff. And he's just trying desperately and it's a comic novel. And he gets fed up and decides like he's done with capitalism, he's done with his job, and he kind of opts out of society. And so far it's very, very fun. I just happen to leave it somewhere else. I have to get it and finish it, but I was enjoying it.
Cow's milk. That's so funny.
Yeah, no one drinks it apparently.
Okay, Nicholas.
I'm in a sort of Victorian Gothic phase right now because I'm working on my next novel. But I'm reading this book called The Moonstone by Wilkie Collins. Wilkie Collins wrote this great book called The Woman in White. But The Moonstone is sort of like the prototypical like modern English detective novel. T.S. Eliot was a huge fan. It was a big influence on Arthur Conan Doyle. Trollope wrote a kind of parody of it. It's great. Wilkie Collins is awesome. Contemporary of Dickens was published in his periodicals, like serialized novels. He's really awesome, really incredible writer, sort of ahead of his time in terms of social issues, which I think is very interesting. Like a lot of his novels are about women who are fighting for not only like personal independence, but fighting to be like understood and actually heard by the men in their lives. And he has such a really interesting way of writing through and about those things, usually through the prejudice of the male characters. And it comes through very clearly. But I just started it, but I really love his work. Great epistolary novelist too. Really does some really interesting things with the form. So yeah, I'm in like Victorian England for the foreseeable future.
Oh, well, thank you all. I'm gonna put that catalog in the chat, but I wanted to read out a comment from Donna. Thank you all so much for this fabulous session. I'm loving the lightning round Rex. Librarians love to hear what authors are reading. So thank you all for indulging us with that and for being here tonight.
Yeah, this
guys.
has been
Yeah.
amazing. We have a little bit of housekeeping just for a few minutes. I know if you have to leave, totally fine. But before you do, thank you so much to all four of you. This is really fantastic. I'm going to read out your pub dates. So we have Dead But Dreaming of Electric Sheep. This is June 30th. Single Girls, July 7th. Observer, September 15th. Can't read. Sophie Standing There, September 8th. And we have a big round of applause to all of our authors tonight. This was really fantastic. Thank you for spending the evening with us and telling us more about your books. If there's anything
Thanks.
anyone wants
Thank
to
you.
add, this is the time. But
Thanks
thank
for
you.
having us, and so nice to meet the other writers, and best of
Yeah,
luck
you
with your
guys too.
books. Yeah,
Yes, a
thank
pleasure.
you.
We have some
Thank you.
reading to do, all of us.
Anything you want, it's yours. All right, so we're going to do a little housekeeping, but if you're welcome to stay on, but I understand time is waning. So for our viewers, we have a little exciting sneak peek. Grace, cue it on up.
Oh, all right, hold up. One sec.
Bye.
Oh no, I mean tell them about
Oh.
it. I'm gonna bring up.
I was like, oh, we are heading to Chicago for ALA.
Oh, sorry,
Oh.
I forgot. I had one more. So these are the I should have had this up when I read out their pub dates. Sorry. The Alma Book Buzz tomorrow. Be there. It's gonna be exciting. Okay, sorry, Grace. Go ahead.
Nope, you're good. I'll put the link for the Alma thing right now. I got ahead of myself. I was just really excited, guys. I was really excited. Okay, wait. So Alma form is no longer taking responses.
Okay, well, it's fine. We
Well, we'll
will
find it.
we'll get you there.
We'll
Just
get
let us
there.
know if you're not
Yeah,
registered already.
totally. We
But
can
thank
email
you
one of them.
for all of the lovely comments tonight, and we have a fun sneak peek. We go to ALA and we always do a fun little ad for you. So you tell me and Grace, it's in Chicago, hint. Now, what is our ad about? You're
Whoever
welcome.
gets there first will get a bragging rights. I have nothing else to offer you at the moment, but you do get bragging rights.
This is only a snippet of our ad that's going to go in the trade magazines, but just know that our buzz, you can RSVP, you can even do this link right now if you haven't yet. We're going to ALA, we're going to be buzzing titles. We have some fun author videos to show. We have a galley drop. So, you've heard it here first. You get to see um our lovely little ad.
Yeah.
Um and no one said it, but it's okay. It's Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Thank you. Thank you.
No,
Very
Lane and
proud
I
of
look so much
this.
like the actors. I've been
Yes.
told I look like Alan Ruck my whole life. So really glad I got to star. Oh, we get some laughs in the chat, laughs in the chat. We had a lot of fun with that. Lainey has a brand new fringe jacket that she can wear anytime she wants. This is my second year in a row wearing a sports jersey for an ad, which is funny because I don't play
Grace
sports.
is big sports fan, apparently.
Yeah, and yeah, Lainey's heading to Coachella with her print jacket, but we will be there in Chicago buzzing about books. It's a really fun morning. We just did the catering order. We got pastries coming, pastries, books.
Join us. It's going to be really great. We have a big book list to give you. So
Like
join
a lot of
us.
books.
We can even throw some Ferris Bueller jokes in there. I mean, obviously for legal reasons, we're not putting Ferris Bueller on the ad, but you know what it is. All
Yeah.
right. I think that that's it. We're going to sign off. We're running out of time. We've already run out of time. Thank you so much for joining us. This is a really great night, and we thank all of our authors. This is fabulous.
Yeah, thank you so much all. And for the people who want the Alma link, email me. I put my email in the chat. We'll get it worked out. So
Yeah.
thank you all. Have a beautiful May. We'll be off in June and we'll be back in July. See you later.
Bye.